everybody. Welcome to today's 1 million by 1 million strategy roundtable for entrepreneurs. 1M, as you know, is the first and only and the largest global virtual accelerator for technology startups in the world. Our mission is to help 1 million entrepreneurs reach $1 million and beyond in annual revenue. In support of that mission, we've been doing these free mentoring roundtables for entrepreneurs around the world since the fall of 2008. It was an experiment. The experiment was successful. Today, over 150,000 people have participated in these sessions. We literally see people from everywhere. We see people from our own backyard right here in Silicon Valley, but we also see people, as you will see today, people from very far away destinations. And sometimes we see people from very small towns, very small places where we had no idea we were being followed. And that's always hugely entertaining and inspiring for me to see that happen. One time we had an entrepreneur from Srinagar in Kashmir, which is in the foothills of the Western Himalayas, and he was doing a local milk delivery, kind of Uber for milk delivery for Kashmir project. And I found that so thrilling and so exciting that it has remained with me as an example of how far and wide we are distributing today. The event is being recorded. Every single roundtable recording is available on the 1M1M Roundtables channel on YouTube. On Twitter, we are at 1M1M and at Romana. You're welcome to follow either. We publish a lot of interesting content. Hashtag 1M1M is today's hashtag. This is a roundtable, not a broadcast. So you're very welcome to join in. I will put the slide up again. WebEx has recently changed their configuration, and you can actually speak directly from the computer as well. So it depends on where you are and what your connection quality is. You can choose to do it either way. We are going to start today's session with a conversation with Eric Benhamou, founder and general partner of Benhamou Global Ventures. Eric is a longtime friend of mine, and he's been here before. And I've watched how he has built Benhamou Global Ventures from the ground up. Eric, welcome back to the show, and we look forward to catching up.
Thanks, Ramana. Thanks for having me back.
So let's level set on where are you, in terms of the fund. What fund are you on? What's the size of the fund, and what's the fund strategy now?
Well, there's more than one fund now. We have 4 active funds, and 2 of them are fully invested. The last one is still in the midst of being raised. We're about 2/3 of the way. And in total, we have approximately $300 to $350 million in the management. And because we have LPs around the world and a lot of relationships to manage, for the first time, we have to formalize our investor relations program, because we've got to keep in touch with all these investors, and they're not all the same. So we have an investor relations small group inside BGV to help us continue the growth. But that's basically approximately the size of the firm. And we don't expect it to be much bigger than this, because if we cross a certain threshold, the nature of what we do would fundamentally change. So we think we're optimally sized. And the focus of the firm has not changed. We've added a few nuances along the way, but basically we focus on young companies, and I'll refine this later. Companies who are basically driving the digital transformation of enterprises around the world. And that's true across all vertical sectors. And more specifically, what we focus on today in our Fund 4 is what we call Enterprise 4.0 companies. These are a little different from the companies that we would have considered, say, a decade ago. All Enterprise 4.2 companies have AI at the core. They leverage new data sets. They tend to be solutions oriented as opposed to components oriented. They typically deploy solutions in the form of intelligent automated workflows that fundamentally disrupt and improve the economics of the vertical sector. And these solutions tend to be adopted not centrally, but in business units, in divisions, in plants. And that makes them more attractive from a VC perspective because the decision-making process is easier to deal with, it is faster, and it is more conducive to generating venture returns. And we found that these companies exist around the world, and I think that you wanted to explore geography as well. But let me just add this important nuance. These companies are not born in Silicon Valley. These companies are born in geographies thousands of miles away from here. They inevitably have to come to Silicon Valley because there's a stage of growth where the relationships you weave in Silicon Valley are essential. And we try to intercept them in that journey. So while they have the nexus in their geography of origin, and we can explore this more deeply, they end up looking like global companies with a Silicon Valley face very quickly. So that's basically what EGV is about today.
Right. So let's double click on a few different points. Maureen, there's a noise of some kind that I haven't heard before. I don't know where it's coming from, but in any case, it's a bit annoying. Anyway, so Eric, let's talk about check sizes. Where are you looking to come in? What level of validation needs to exist before you're willing to write those checks, and what size checks are you interested in writing?
Well, I'll describe the sweet spot and then the variations around that. A sweet spot of intersecting companies is when they have their first product out in the hands of customers. They may or may not be paying customers yet, but they're engaged enough that we can verify early stages, early signs of product market fit. So our mandate is not to take huge technology risks. We want to make sure the technology is fundamentally working. We're prepared to underwrite all the other risks, such as market, company building, and so on. But in general, these are what you would call Series C plus or Series A companies. That's roughly the stage in which we invest. And when we do that, we typically lead with a $3 to $5 million check. But sometimes we go upstream and we intercept companies even before they have their first products out, either because we're really convinced about what they're doing or we know the entrepreneurial team. There are reasons for us to mitigate that risk of going upstream. And when we do that, we typically start with a $250,000 check. And all in, when we stay with companies all the way through, we end up investing 15 to 20 million.
Okay.
So we don't drop companies when we get to a growth stage. We stay with them, and we stay with them all the way to an exit point. So, but we describe ourselves as early stage because that's fundamentally very different from what growth stage or expansion stage firms do. So, anyway.
So another question along those lines I have is, when you're doing AI, typically there is machine learning involved and there is large data sets involved. What are you seeing in your portfolio or in your deal flow of how entrepreneurs are accessing that data? You're talking about taking the technology risk out. Well, you kind of need to have data to be able to take the technology risk out in AI companies. What are the best practices you are observing in your orbit?
Well, it is rare that that young companies have access to a vast proprietary data sets.
Right.
However, they could make this semi-proprietary by having unique curation methods and having a unique way of optimizing the algorithm to process that data. Let me give you an example. We recently invested in a company originally born in India called AI Dash, and they focus on processing satellite data imagery. And there's so much more of it today than even 5 years ago because we keep launching satellites by the dozens per day. So there's an enormous amount of data available of high quality, which can be analyzed for a very specific purpose. And in their case, they use it to help companies like PG&E manage the physical assets. By analyzing this data, they're able to detect whether a shrub or a tree is going to interfere with a power line or a distribution center. And they're able to basically optimize for this use case all the way to the point of automating the workflow of dispatching the truck to go clear the overgrowth of shrubbery. So,
Okay.
so that's an example of data that's some of it is publicly available, some of it is available on license. However, the way you treat this data for the specific purpose is unique to AI Dash, and the way you incorporate this into a workflow is unique to what they do and the customer group that they cater to. And that's very typical of Enterprise 4.0 companies.
Okay. And am I picking up right that you are only focused on the enterprise, not on small business focused businesses?
Initially, yes. However, what happens is sometimes companies who are successful in large enterprises are able to evolve the offering to be totally PLG-like, so product-led growth, and go downstream or down market and make their offerings suitable for small, medium-sized businesses. So this happens fairly often, but the point of entry, the point of validation is the large enterprise. We believe that they're the ones who are confronted with the most difficult problems, and this is where you can erect the strongest barriers of entry in technology modes.
Good. All right. So, Eric, you must have read the articles that I have written recently about the past trends that is picking up. Actually, even one year ago, I think it was less prominent. Now it's more prominent, and I've had conversations with a lot of players who have either lots of integrations, API integrations into their platforms, and these are slightly larger companies, obviously. And in some cases, there are companies who have 25,000, 35,000, 45,000 developers, and they're really trying to build out Salesforce.com's fast strategy. And I think this thinking is becoming a lot wider spread than I had noticed 2 years ago. I had, kind of seen this coming. I may have talked to you about it, and I'd seen this coming. It is picking up. That trend is definitely building. What is your analysis of this trend, and how does your fund see this trend, and how do you want to play in it?
Yeah, you're completely right about having described this trend as a very exciting trend. It's very important, and I think it reflects the fact that today to roll out applications that make a meaningful difference in the life of either consumers or enterprises, you have to optimize stacks. And the way to manage stack optimization is to have a platform-like approach with a rich tool set. So this is completely within the scope of what we do. Enterprise 4.0 companies come in the form of PaaS companies with rich tool sets. An example of this would be one of our larger companies is Platform.sh. It's a French-born company, but it has offices in half a dozen different countries. And what they do is that they help companies optimize and manage fleets of websites. Sometimes we mistakenly think that a website is a unique thing, but in reality, large enterprises have hundreds, if not thousands, of websites that cater to different customer groups, partners, and so on. And to manage this in a consistent way, it will require a unique tool set. You cannot manage these sites one at a time. So Platform does this in a very, very effective way for extremely large enterprises. And they do this by basically optimizing a stack that's unique to the way you build and run websites. And that's an example of us capitalizing on the past trend. More recently,
you covered platform.sh a while ago. At the time, obviously this trend was not, it must have been 3-4 years ago. So I haven't talked to them since. So it's good to hear that you're thinking in this direction. I'll look into that more closely and see what additional coverage that deserves. But please go ahead. You were going to give us another example.
A more recent example. In fact, there was a company, an investment that was announced just last week. It's a young company called Evinced. Evinced, like the word, the adjective evinced, EVINCED, and they focus on an important emerging problem called digital accessibility. So again, we talked about websites. Well, websites have to be digitally accessible by everybody, even people with a physical impairment. And it turns out that even if you have no physical impairments, many websites are not truly digital accessible, meaning that oftentimes there are fields that you cannot click on, or there are descriptions in extremely small font size or illegible font size. So there's a lot of UI, UX problems which impair digital accessibility for everybody, in particular for people who have physical impairments. And because we're proliferating applications, you cannot solve for these problems by having vast armies of QA engineers all over the world to check all these different versions being put out every day.
Yeah.
You have to have a tool set that automates the identification of these problems and the remediation of these problems. And that's what they do.
Okay. So,
and of course, they leverage AI in a way that fits the model that I described before. And they're and this is and they have basically a tool set and a stack that today is initially used by QA engineers downstream, but over a period of time, maybe two to 3 years, it'll be used by DevOps engineers at application creation time.
Okay.
It will shift left towards the upstream developments. And that's an example of a path optimized for a very specialized problem.
Mm-hmm. And how do you see this, trend or this structure of company building evolving? Like, in the case of Salesforce.com, we saw two things, right? We saw Salesforce.com itself becoming a gigantic success story with really a force multiplier effect on its valuation and so on. And then we also saw really great companies being built on Salesforce.com that in their own rights became very successful companies, Viva being one of my favorite examples. I've known the CEO of Viva for a long time, and they really built that company for $4 million, They raised more money, but they never really used it. They probably delivered $600 million worth of revenue with just $4 million in investment. So it does, if you play it right, and if you have a good marketplace, if you choose a good path which has a good marketplace, you can actually get very far with very little investment. How do you see that angle developing?
Well, you're right. So companies like Salesforce.com have created a vast ecosystem that makes it possible for a new generation of companies to live within it. We certainly view this as an opportunity because, we build value by stack levels. And if you come into an environment that already has a fully deployed Salesforce.com CRM system, you can take advantage of all the capabilities and APIs that they be exposed to create different kinds of value.
Yeah.
By the way, Salesforce.com, for all its successes, does not do everything perfectly. So there's a lot of territory that's undercovered. That's opportunity for entrepreneurs.
You're seeing all kinds of things. The company that I recently sent you is one of those gaps that exists in the Salesforce.com ecosystem.
Yeah, and we met them just a couple of days ago. And another example there is that Salesforce.com does not do a very good job of mobile engagements. Mm-hmm. And yet, despite the pandemic, we're still living in a world that's increasingly more mobile. So you have to be able to capitalize on mobile engagements opportunities all the time. And there are many things which are architecturally limiting in Salesforce that prevent it from doing a great job there. And that's a space which is available for younger companies who don't have the architectural baggage of Salesforce.
Mm-hmm. So from a fund strategy point of view, you would consider investing also in companies that build on somebody else's stack or somebody else's stack?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a great example of this as a category is MarTech tools.
Yes.
Of course, some people say it's an overfunded space because there have been 8,000 to 9,000 companies funded there. But on the other hand, we have such an insatiable appetite for improving digital engagement tools, tools that help us better understand customer journeys in the digital world, that we consume these tools. At some point, we're going to have to do some rolling up and rationalization of these tools in a coherent tool set. And this is creating opportunities in its own right. But all of these tools, to your point, build on existing marketing stack layers. Yeah. Whether it's Adobe, Marketo, and so there's a whole bunch of stacks available, and they create a different way of solving a very important digital problem that leverages existing stack deployment.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. All right. Now, as you look around, you have your deal flow, you have your portfolio, you watch the broader trends. What are some things that you are looking for? Like you see something going on trend-wise and you want to invest in that category or in that general trend. Are there nuggets that you could offer with more specific directions?
Well, there's really a lot, and frankly, I'm very optimistic about our industry right now. When I say our industry, I don't mean all of venture capital. As we discussed before, we focus on early stage, and one trend which accelerated in 2020, partly as a result of the pandemic, is that most of our peers started to deploy more of the capital downstream, meaning expansion and growth stage and later. And even though it was a record year in terms of amount of venture capital invested, much more of it was invested downstream and much less of it as a percentage was invested in seed, Series C plus, Series A. So it makes this environment where we play less competitive in the sense of there's much less chances of valuation inflation. And in fact, we've seen valuation inflation in Series C, D plus companies, but not at Series C and C plus. If anything, Series C valuations have tapered down a little bit in the last 2 or 3 quarters. So it's a very benign environment for us, and we want to take advantage of it. So that's more of a capital deployment trend, which I'm referring to. But in terms of opportunities in the end markets, You find them literally across the board of vertical sectors. I'll give you one which at first looks a bit far-fetched. Waste recycling, waste management.
Yeah.
I don't think it's of waste management as something fertile for technology disruption, but in fact it is. And I did not suspect that up until a year ago, but then I started to look into this more closely. First of all, there's a societal trend that we generate more and more waste. This is one of the attributes of consumer societies. But at the same time, we have less and less tolerance for poorly managed waste. We want to, as part of our climate change and climate control policies, we want to do a better job of recycling waste. And up until recently, waste management was really done exactly the same way as 30 years ago. So you would have big trucks collecting garbage from houses, office building, and so on, taking them to waste recycling facilities where you would have it would be dumped on treadmill-like structures, and you have people with goggles and gloves sorting out the waste and putting the aluminum cans in a big bin and the milk jugs in a different bin, and then sending this off to be resold as recycled material. So this is begging for disruption.
Yeah, it's a robotics problem.
Yeah, it's a robotics, machine vision problem, control, analytics, but basically every neighborhood has a waste profile. And this waste profile can be used to train an AI engine to recognize all of these objects. And robots can pick these objects much more safely and faster than human beings. And they can be recycled in ways which are much higher quality of material, basically. So this is an example of a complete solution taking advantage of AI, new data sets, which is basically collected by machine vision cameras, and resulting in a much improved workflow. So it hits all of the aspects of enterprise 4.0 companies. And not only that, but it produces cash-on-cash returns which are unbeatable. So you have, and you can deploy this in one recycling center without having to get clearance from the chief technology officer of the entire company. So you have a lot of the attributes to look for in an enterprise 4.0 startup.
And this is something you have invested in already.
Yeah, we have invested in a company that's in this space. There's been a few other big investments made by other firms there because the space is just begging for disruptive solutions.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Very good. And one other trend that I will share with you, and then we'll move on to listening to entrepreneurs. We picked this up a while ago, and again, this trend has built up more, and especially I think in COVID, it has moved up significantly. It's this bootstrapping with a paycheck trend. People are starting side businesses and doing side businesses, validating side businesses, and coming into full-time entrepreneurship later in the cycle. I don't know if you're seeing this in your deal flow, but we are certainly seeing this in our community a lot.
Yeah, we've not seen this as much, and sometimes we're a bit mistrustful of these businesses because if a young business or if a small business has lived on at small scale for a long time, we have some doubts about the entrepreneur's fundamental drive to build an impactful business. And for us, we have a mandate from our own investors. We need to generate venture returns, and you cannot generate venture returns without scale. So a business which has operated in say $1 million revenue range for 5 years which all of a sudden now claims to want to grow at 100% a year. It's possible. We love this, but we're going to scrutinize this very closely, because it's not just a question of opportunity, it's a question of desire and drive.
Well, I don't think that's the profile of the companies that I'm talking about. For example, you know, in enterprise, especially getting meetings with people to validate your idea already takes several months.
Yes.
So you know what, that validation phase of getting the right meetings and talking to the right people to get validation on your idea, to even scope out the product and so forth, is a, you know, I would say 9, 12, 18-month process. And during that period, there is not huge upside in quitting your job and cutting off your source of income for most people. So I think people are coming to realize that. And I think especially in enterprise, this is a very important trend to note that you know, you can actually fund your seed stage with your paycheck and get to validation before you quit your job.
Yeah, you're right, Sonal. These profiles exist, and we love them. What I was reacting to more is people who've had a lifestyle business for many years who now pretend to be entrepreneurs because it's fashionable. And so we have to separate out these two flows. But you're right. It happens very often that an entrepreneur has a great idea, but it takes more than a year to get any kind of seed capital to put the idea into at least prototype form. So we typically we don't have the resources to scout for these sort of entrepreneurs, because well, there's only so many people in our firm. We try to operate one or two levels downstream from there.
Yes, I know.
But as you know, we've made an effort to scout for these entrepreneurs in India through our incubator ARCA, which has identified close to 30 such companies in the last 3 years, and we think there's going to be many more in the next 3 years. So we're trying to catch them one level earlier, and then as they get to a certain level, that's they fall into a field of vision, and then we can pick them up here at BGV, and hopefully lead a Series A round, something like that.
Yeah. All right. Very good. Let's listen to Maureen. We're talking to Sonal first. Let me get Sonal's slides up. Sonal, could you unmute your line?
Can you hear me,
Yes.
ladies and gents?
Fine. Go ahead.
All right. Should I put on my video or keep the video off? Whatever
It's
you
up to
like.
you. It depends on how good a connection you have.
The connection should be good. I'm just in bed. That's the only problem. So, but otherwise it's okay. Good. I'm good to go.
Go ahead.
Right. So, a very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gents, wherever in the world you are. And that's actually the way we start our VRAcademi class, because VRAcademi stands for Virtual Reality Academy. And our tagline is Creator I Am Possible, or Creator Impossible. So my name is Sonal. I used to head a company, a German software company. And 2 years ago, we sold the company to Porsche SA Group in Germany. And then I quit my job. I didn't want to continue there anymore. I was responsible for Dubai and the Middle East and an Indian market. And I was very keen on doing something of my own. My brother was heading a gaming company really in India, also based in London as well. And we decided to do something quite different. So here I am today. I'm talking to you from Dubai. If you got any questions, you may ask perhaps after the presentation. In the PDF link, there are links to everything else. So what is VRAcademi really? VRAcademi is an online learning platform aiming for kids as young as the age of 9 and above to impart digital and design learning technology to young people. So often when you want to, let's take, for example, get into an industry like virtual reality, you would pick up a course from Udemy or an academy or something like that, or pick up a book. And there is very little guidance which is available on how you can actually develop your own amazing content in virtual reality. It's quite hard because most of the guys who are in this field would focus on software education. And when you are young, you really are, the least thing that you're bothered about is only software. We at VRAcademi, we found the fact that actually there's a complete gap in reaching out kids and talking to them about design and how we can combine art and technology together into a beautiful marriage. A lot of work that we try to do at VRAcademi is basically expanding the imagination of kids so that they can get away a little bit from the software learning and they can use traditional art so as to really create or unleash their imagination into an existing virtual present past or future world. And it is this imagination of kids that we are focusing on. With every kid, it's very important that they try to discover the source of imagination from inside of them. So mindfulness becomes an integrated part of what we try to imbibe in our e-learning platform. How you can use the technology of mindfulness to blend art and technology so that you can cast your dream in virtual reality. So we use technology as an enhancer, as a tool to learn graphics and design processes so that kids can make their own virtual reality arts, films, or games. So the picture that you see on the right is maybe back in the previous slide. The picture that you see on the right is what one of the graduates, a 12-year-old girl from VRAcademi, drew after. That's her interpretation of VRAcademi, really, so to speak. Next slide. So here we are at VRAcademi. Our inspiration, our tagline is that imagination is more important than knowledge. That's what Albert Einstein had put in a statement many, many years ago, because imagination is where you can embrace the entire world, whereby you can stimulate progress and give birth to evolution. Where we sit is, next slide, where we sit right now is to give this particular design education to the children. And that's exactly the difference between BlackBerry and Apple. While BlackBerry was an amazing tool, it had a lot of security, too many buttons, it didn't survive because it was not easy to use. Whereas Apple had a beautiful design and it survived. Can we not impart this design education to the kids? And the inspiration to create VRAcademi for me came from the fact that when I saw my own kid as well, and I'll talk a little bit about that, with the COVID problem or pandemic, a lot of kids were thrown in at homes and they were using a lot of technology, sometimes to learn things, sometimes to play things, but they were users of technology rather than being able to nurture their creativity with technology. And all of this led to a lot of boredom and kids became more and more isolated. And we thought within our team that why don't we use the virtual reality platform so as a design tool, so to speak, where they could come and explore their minds through. And whether we talk about art and design or software development, these three elements have never ever been married together. Now, when I was a kid, I used to solve mathematics by just imagining art. People thought it was weird, but it was very quick for me to solve complex equations. So we truly felt that within our team that maybe there is a scope out over there. If you go to the next slide. And the biggest inspiration came from my own personal story. In March last year, my 10-year-old kid developed a rare autoimmune infection, and we were in hospital for about a month. It was really tough. But as a company, we were actually producing virtual reality for the big corporates. So we had just finished our own experience. We had put India's journey to the moon in a VR platform. India had launched a satellite to moon, which actually failed. But in VR, everything is possible. So in VR, our kid could just go in VR and he could navigate the lunar rover and learn a lot about science and gravity and whatnot. And he truly could forget all his pain and get reconnected with his own self. And he asked me, Papa, can I learn how you do this? And that was the start of VRAcademi, so to speak, a very, very personal start. And 6 months down the line, more or less, we got our whole team funded, not whole project funded through self efforts. Next slide, please. And we give birth to what is called VRAcademi. So if you go to the next slide, please. So the creation of VRAcademi comes from the company that I'm currently heading. It's me and my brother are partners in this company, and we create content, high quality content for corporates to build virtual reality. That's our studio in New Delhi. Next one, please. And we have done a lot of work for a lot of big names: Paramount Studios, EA Sports, FIFA, Google, and so on and so forth, to name a few. Now, this high quality product was either aimed at the gaming sector, was aimed at the corporate sector through exhibitions, whatever they wanted to do. If you go to the next slide. So PwC, for example, is one for big clients. We also build a lot of game titles for big corporates. These were never done under our name. So the Moon exhibition was the first one that we launched on our own. And when we did the Moon exhibition, the India Journey to the Moon, and we started working with kids directly, we knew that we were sitting on something great. And we did a couple of shows showing what this virtual reality experience was last year before the COVID pandemic hit. And a lot of these schools, teachers, parents, they said, well, they want their kid to learn how to build stuff in VR, not just use VR. So next one. And from there, we went on to the drawing board with my entire team, and we said, how can we create this complex, I would say, pipeline of building virtual reality feasible for kids? So we had to do a lot of experimentation. We did a couple of focus group studies with about 60 kids across the world in August. And we knew that it doesn't have to be software education. Because if you want to learn virtual reality, you would go and pick up a book. It will tell you file open, file close, do this, do that. That's not what kids want to do. Kids want to learn, and they want to get their hands dirty straight away. So can we not combine art and traditional tools so as to create something in virtual reality? And that's what we did with the creation of VRAcademi, that every class is a combination of traditional art, playing drawing, and digital skills that you can enhance your drawings with. Next one, please. So what we do at
So now,
yeah,
are you using a particular virtual reality authoring platform that you're training your audience on, these kids on?
Yes, I'll talk about the software that we use, but we have tried to keep the software open source as much as we can, because we don't want kids to get married to a certain device or a certain platform as such. So we use industry standard tools. So I'll talk about the tools that we use in a few slides. They will come down there. But the most important element is that from the age of 9, how can we use the art to communicate and express themselves? And here the children, they learn to work, first of all, with the basic theory of art or design. So if you want to be, for example, a fashion designer, you have to understand what really fashion means, perhaps, for example. What are different types of fabric? If you want to learn architecture, you must learn what is 2 dimensions or 3 dimensions. And at that young age of 9, you want kids to explore these tangible stuff, not just with technology, but with their own physical creativity by working with physical objects. Once you get a grasp on the physical object, you then go into tech. And I'll talk about the tech. If you go to the next slide. So we knew that whatever we want to do, we want to be able to engage with all the faculties of kid. And here again, 12-year-old girl has drawn this, when she finished, what she felt after graduating from a VRAcademi class or a course. So she said that you use your feelings and emotions, you combine ideas coming out of music, the left and the right part of the brain. And of course, you want to study something, but what you do is exercise your imagination. You exercise the human brain to its fullest potential right from the age of 9. If we go to the next slide, please. So here we developed 3 bespoke courses, and it's the way things were. When there was a man in the Stone Age, he did not have any film or virtual reality or games. He was just drawing on his cave. So we thought that the first thing that we must use is to give the idea of design, creative design and digital art using virtual reality. When these pictures move, they turn into a film. And film is a very big expression. Kids want to make their YouTube videos, but they want to share it with their granny, and the granny might be located far away and they can't meet each other. Can they not just meet in VR and have their digital avatars and see the film together? But we wanted kids to learn how to make film, how to set up these VR rooms on their own so that they can interact. And then, of course, beyond that level is creating a game where you are the hero or the villain yourself. So they must learn how not just to play the games like Fortnite, but how they can create simple games itself. Now, when we did our research, if you go to the next slide, we came to know that we can't use one platform for everybody. There's a threshold in child's development between the age of 9 to 13 that they need to work with different set of tools. And after 13, they can use more advanced tools. So when we are working with younger kids in, for example, the game development technology that we want to give, the software we use is Autodesk Tinkercad, and that's available free of cost. You don't need to pay any money. It works on the cloud, so you can just work straight away. And we use Mozilla Mixed Reality as a tool to build VR. For kids who want to build complex games, we introduce them to Unity and a little bit of programming using C#. But the focus is not programming, because we can help them to program. The focus is to have that idea of building something like Pac-Man or Pokemon or whatever it is that they want to come up with. Kids who are 13 plus, we currently have a program in 3D Studio Max, but we are converting it into Blender from actually next week onwards, which is open source as well, and it doesn't cost to start downloading and working with it. Now the classes have been built, the curriculum has been built in an intensive way. What we have right now is basically a class which is classes which are set up into two different terms. The introductory term, which is led by the tutor, and then a practical term, which is kids' own project to create something amazing. So in the second term, they unleash whatever their ideas are and bring them to material. There are 2 classes per week, so it's a bit intensive, and there are about maximum 8 to 9 kids in a group, no more than that. Otherwise, we can't focus on the classes. Now, these classes have been costed in a way that they are quite, I would say, affordable for kids, not just from the US. We have a different pricing mechanism for India and developing countries. So this is $699 per term. If you go down to the next one itself, the graphic design is 1 term, but at $415 per term. And the next one, which is a film design, again, where they are learning they start to learn how to create animation using Scratch. Now, Scratch again is open source and is free. More seniors, they learn it using Adobe Premiere, and then they get into Unity and C#. And here again, the class is more or less, that's the maximum retail price that we've got at $559. Now, if you go ahead, why are we really doing this thing? The biggest focus for us was how we can, if you go to the next slide, please, how we can create some of the, can we go to the next slide, please? Sorry. How we can not just give the software tools, which are all mentioned over here, and most of them are open source, and kids have got free access to them. Not just that, but how we can work on creative skills of kids, critical thinking, imagination, visualization, digital design, and more importantly, storytelling. That's the key. The kids love to explain their stories. Can they not learn and create something which will be their wonderful wow forever? Next one, please. So in more or less summary, the biggest impact for creating VRAcademi is allowing kids to imagine, to create, and collaborate in virtual reality. Eventually, they put whatever their projects are, whether it's art or film or game, straight away into VR, and they can interact with it with their friends and with their family. So they are not just experiencing VR, but they are creating it, so to speak.
How do you go to market? Is this a B2C business? Is it? Are you selling to schools? What's the, you talk a lot about the experience. Where is the go-to-market strategy?
It's there. I'll just explain that. So our target profile is basically parents of children above the age of 9, so to speak. And we are looking at English-speaking countries because we speak English. Our tutors who are located in disparate locations all the way from Ireland to UK to Dubai and India, they all speak very good English. That's our target profile. And if you look at the market strategy, we just launched our platform literally 2 weeks ago. That's where we are right now. And if you go to the next slide, it really talks about our marketing strategy. We know where we are compared to people like White Hat Junior, Class VR, Udemy, and so on and so forth. Nobody offers design education, combining it with technology education so far. We know, so there's a market for that. What we also want to do, and something which was skipped in the previous slides, is that we are curating whatever content the students do in virtual reality. So we have designed an experience like the Tate in VR, but here the Tate is not just of famous artists, but of your kid. So let's take maybe your nephew, for example. Samarana has, for example, she has created, sorry, niece, she has created a beautiful piece of art. It can be living in Tate forever, and it's an alternate to Instagram, which we want to create, where we are.
So I really would like to focus on go-to-market strategy.
Okay, next slide, and that's the last slide, so to speak, from our end. So these are our pathways to market. We are looking at B2B2C partnerships. We are starting with GEMS education in Dubai. GEMS have got 100,000 kids in mainly around Dubai and Qatar, and these are high-paying, I would say, parents who are expat parents, and they have the ability to pay. They are one of the main, I would say, pathways into kids. We have collaborated with Children's SOS Village in India, where our objective is very simple: that who pays the fee, we pick up a child who cannot pay or does not have access to technology from the SOS villages. These are orphans. We have got in India.
So now, hang on. What is the deal with GEMS education?
They are just brokers, to be honest, in education. They will take a 20% fee cut, because VR is kind of niche and chic. So they will give access to the parents, and they will take a 20% cut over any fee that we make out of the school. Having said that, that's at one end of consumer market.
One second. You're going too fast, and you're not focusing on what I'm trying to focus on, which is customer acquisition strategy. How long would it take, if they have access to 100,000 parents, how long would it take you to convert that audience into paying customers of your product?
Yeah, so we have access to a few of these kids anyway. What I wanted to demonstrate is that in the first quarter, having about 300 kids, that we can either have access to paying customers or unpaying customers, but people who like what we do, to demonstrate our MVP. Only this week we got a letter from Rosenberg Institute, which is a boarding school in Switzerland. They call themselves as Artisans of Education, where I knew the deputy head teacher, and she liked our curriculum. We did a few free classes, and they're going to give us 45 kids. We have also talked to Copenhagen Institute of Design. They will give us about 25 postgraduate kids, teenagers, that we can work with. We are working with School of Planning and Architecture, where again they will give access to about 60 first-time architects who can expand into it. So some of them are paying customers, and with Children's SOS Village, we will have about 35 kids who are in SOS villages across New Delhi and Pune who would also join desperately. We have so far got about 25 kids who enrolled organically through basic messages. We haven't even had our campaign sorted out on LinkedIn, on social media like Facebook, etc. But our Q1 target would be, it'll be amazing if we can get about 500 kids enrolled in the first quarter. We have a marketing budget internally from my savings, looking at Instagram, Facebook adverts, and mainly YouTube adverts. This is going to be our primary focus market, and the focus market is very, very small around the Gulf paying countries, so that we can then cross-subsidize our efforts into India. These are the type of numbers which we are looking at, more or less, so to speak. So by the end of year one, we are looking at about $3 million business, going up exponentially in the coming few years. And you would like to do VR, you would like to put yourself into VRAcademi, because if you really want your child not just to become a robot to learn how to code, if he must understand that why is he coding and the real purpose behind it, and put his design hat on, then probably he can do a better job, not just at coding, but being a better human in totality.
So now what brings you here?
I just saw you and I felt that it would be really interesting. And of course, we definitely need capital as well, access to capital, because I would run out fast if, we don't get some cash injections. So I thought that I'll come over here and learn from you.
Let me give you a few pieces of feedback. The projections that you're making would only make sense to an investor. Like if I'm listening to this pitch as an investor, there are a few things that I want to see. And the number one is, how are you going to get this business to paying customers? Is it a B2B business or is it a B2B2C business? B2B2C is what you're most likely going to succeed with. And the school examples that you're talking about resonate with me. The high-end schools that want to provide differentiated curriculum, which means that you need to identify, let's say 100, 200, 500 really high-end schools and create a sales strategy. We use a sales strategy called Sales 2.0, that we call it Sales 2.0, and we have a whole methodology that we apply to scaling and making it a repeatable system. So something like that is what would convince me. If you can show that you can validate that, yes, I can, call up these schools and I can dialogue with them, demonstrate what we are doing, and they're willing to sign up, 50 kids, 80 kids, 100 kids, whatever. That to me is a reasonable path of customer acquisition. The GEMS thing is a reasonable path to customer acquisition, but you're going to need to show validation. That sounds like an interesting channel. What doesn't sound like a very interesting channel, unless you can show very precise conversion economics, unit economics of conversion, are these social media channels, Instagram and so on and so forth. Unless you can show me, if I put in $1 million into your company, how is that going to convert? What is the equation of conversion of that $1 million into, $3 million, $5 million of revenue? Unless you can show me that based on your social media campaign, I would not buy into that strategy. So we have a saying in 1Mby1M, do not spray and pray. Come up with a strategy and execute the hell out of that strategy. And I think, based on my experience, the strategy that is more likely to pay for you is going for very high-end schools. And you should focus on the age category. If you're jumping around to architecture students and, blah, 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 who are much older, that's a different business. I think it's not clear to me what business you're in right now, because you're jumping around so much. Architecture, okay, well, if architecture is your goal, then go after the architecture schools. If design schools or fashion schools is your goal, go after that, because each of those strategies are going to take your product in a different direction. But don't jump around 9 to 13 middle school students, architecture and planning, then fashion this and fashion that. This is not a convincing pitch for an investor. Make sense?
Yeah, okay, absolutely. So we just kept ourselves open right now. That's why whoever came.
So don't keep yourself open. People do not succeed with startups by keeping themselves open. People succeed in startups by laser sharp positioning. Positioning is the make or break secret of startups.
Yeah, today morning only we had a meeting with Freuge in Ireland, which is basically a youth teenage organization. They have got access to 50,000 kids. They are doing some sort of home learning right now in technology, and they were really keen. So we are waiting for them. Maybe we start on an experiment. The problem is always the affordability of people, because people who want to maybe get into this, kids who are really motivated into this.
That is exactly what positioning is. You position your product to a category of customers who can afford it. You should forget all about catering to Indian, underprivileged or underserved category and all that for the moment. Right now, you can do all that when you become rich, and you can do philanthropy. Right now, you need to focus absolutely sharply on rich parents who can afford to pay the kind of fees that you're looking for. That is your positioning, and that means you need to go for high-end schools and sell B2B2C through very high-end schools. So make a list of the highest end schools that you want to go after and start a sales process on that. That's your that's the fastest path to validation, and that's the fastest path to your becoming a viable business.
Agreed.
And to attract investment.
Sure, agreed. Thank you.
Okay. All right. We are going to go to Moibi. Hang on. Maureen, is there a pitch deck for Moibi's pitch?
Yes.
Maybe you're making a lot of noise.
I can hear you very well. Yeah, good evening.
We can hear you. Please go ahead, but
Okay. Yeah, good evening. I can hear you clearly. So, but let me do some things. What about now?
yeah, better, much better. Please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Good evening. This is Zali 601 in Nigeria. So, good morning to you over there, and good afternoon to some other colleagues across the world. So, my name is Moibi Ismail. I'm a co-founder of WeConsortium Limited. You know, here in Africa and Nigeria, we find ourselves in a society whereby individuals and communities have assumed assuming the responsibility of governments. You know, here people on their own efforts, they provide roads, they provide water, they provide electricity, and some other infrastructure needed by themselves. So why WeConsortium came on board to see how we can facilitate and accelerate this effort of individuals and communities. Here is not a news when you are living the street and all of a sudden your transformer gets blow up, maybe by one issue or the other. So people assume the responsibility automatically by coming together to see how they are going to install these facilities on their own. And I'm sure you must have heard a lot from Africa that now China is taking a lot of ride on Africa in terms of helping Africa out in infrastructure development. And that's forced a lot of African leaders' hands to make sure that they took some loan, even though under some stringent conditions. So what we want to do generally, basically, is to see how we are going to crowdfund into public infrastructure. You know, WeConsortium is...
That's a very ambitious idea.
Yes. WeConsortium is what we want to, our market basically is in two areas. We want to have what we call investors and want to have what we call partners. Investors, here, you know, we all know that infrastructure financing is a huge business, and it's meant for the big guys, meant for corporate institutions. And we have very few of such institutions doing that in Nigeria, and particularly in Africa as well. But using our technology, we want to democratize infrastructure investment opportunities. We want to make sure that it's available for everyone using the crowdfunding platform. We want people to co-fund and co-invest into public infrastructure. Since people are doing this already, it's not strange for them, but how are they now going to be getting profit or getting benefit from this investment they are used to is why WeConsortium came on board. So we majorly our customers acquisition. So we intend to roll out. We've been talking already to a lot of people, and people are ready to partner with us, and they are expressing their mind already. They are expressing the positivity towards these ideas, and we really don't. Yes.
I'm going to stop you there and start giving you some feedback, because you have a lot of slides with lots of text. And I think we need to zero in on a path forward if this is what you want to do. First and foremost, you need to, public infrastructure is a very large scope. It's not, you cannot build this business if you go so large and so broad. I'll tell you exactly the same thing that I just told Sonal. Sonal, compared to what you are doing, Sonal is like really well positioned because he has at least, you know, zeroed in on 9 to 13-year-old kids, and he has some, you know, deviations here and there, but he has already focused in a lot more. You are so broad and so all over the place, you will not be able to get this into something manageable unless you start focusing things into bite-sized pieces that can be tackled by a private company. You are going to be a private company that will have to make money and survive as a sustainable business. And that requires very, very tight positioning. So the first homework you should take away from this call, Moibi, is to come up with a category of infrastructure projects.
We already have that. We've already zeroed in on that.
Let me finish. Can you let me finish?
Okay, ma'am.
You have to listen. The first thing you need to do is come up with a category of infrastructure projects that are not too expensive. So these are small infrastructure projects. And what is that? Can you, if you have all these categories identified, give me an example of a category of infrastructure project, public infrastructure project, that is not very expensive to build.
Okay, the first area that we categorize on is one, we are focusing on local communities. Local community, we are not going to the uptown cities, local environment. And what we want to start from is focusing on replacing transformer, electricity transformer. That is just the major thing. When a community light gets fault, the community is expected to fix the transformer. Nobody is even expecting government or anybody to do that. They know that is their responsibility. But the problem is that it takes them many months before they gather or before they were able to replace this. So where we want to come in is to come in to see how we are going to provide them this transformer and make the payments flexible to them, and which at the end of the day, we are going to reduce the stubbornness or the darkness periods for them, and we are going to definitely make our money from that.
Okay, let's take this use case of replacing a local transformer for a local community. Here are the questions that we need to answer based on this use case. Number one, are we trying to get the local people who are going to be the users of this transformer to finance this project? And you're trying to crowdfund from the local community the money that is required to do this.
Yes, what we intend to, that is exactly what we want to do. We are going to open the sponsorship to everyone, and which at the end of the day, the local community, they pay for this facility.
That's a different business. See, when you're trying to create local infrastructure funded by the users of that facility themselves, that is less of an investment, more of a just like taking care of your own needs. Because if you're talking about bringing in investors who expect a return by investing in this project, then you have to provide what is the ROI, what is the IRR, etc., of doing this. And that's, that's a whole, do you have the calculation of like if a random investor, not somebody who's going to be a user of this facility, somebody from the outside wants to come and invest in this project, can they actually get a return on this investment? And how are you going to give them that return? That is the question, right? You have two different audiences based on the case that you have provided. Let's say this is your MVP. You're going to do this local transformer replacement as your MVP. You're going to find, 100 communities that each want to replace their local transformers. You will provide the crowdfunding infrastructure to do that. And that's how you're going to start this out. You have still two questions. Is it just the local users who are going to be participating in this crowdfunding campaign, or are you trying to bring in external investors looking for returns? That's a whole different ballgame.
Yes, we are going to definitely, we are bringing in external investors, majorly retail investors. They are going to participate in this project, and which at the end of the day,
is there a return in replacing some?
Yes, definitely. Yes, there is a return. They are going to definitely get a return. We, in our investment plan, we have majorly three types of investment plan. We have what we call basic investments, we have medium investment, and we have premium investment. And in basic investments, as a retail investor, you are expected to invest like a minimum of $500. And why as medium investor, you are expected to invest minimum of $10,000. Why as premium investor, you are expected to invest minimum of $100,000 for different investment duration. We have 1 year, we have 2 years, we have 3 years, and we have 5 years, and with different return. For our 1 year, our return is structured in a way whereby is ranging between 15 to 25% rate interest for the investors based on the duration of their investment. And also this investment, this fund, what we are going to be working, our company are not the one that will be responsible for replacing the transformer. We are going to be working with a lot of local developers. We are going to have them on board. Ours is to focus on investment platform, and but our target area that our interest goes is local project, local infrastructure. But we are going to be working with a lot of local investors, and local developers. Why our investors can come from any part of the world.
Okay, so Moibi, my guidance to you is be specific, find a category that you understand how to present that has enough returns. If you're trying to get real investors, then you need to have categories that actually can provide returns on investment, and you need to be able to explain, or they need to be able to explain the return on investment. Your question I will answer. You can outsource the development. It's very easy. Go to Upwork and find a vendor, go through the process of recruiting a good vendor who can, if you have a good spec of what you're trying to develop, you can hire somebody from, India or Eastern Europe or somewhere, or probably even in Africa, there are developers on Upwork who will be willing to do it for you and just outsource the development. Okay?
Yes. That's exactly what we intended.
All right.
Thank
Very
you.
Good. Folks, as you can see, what I try to do in this program is give you feedback which will help you move forward, which will help you advance your thinking, which will help you focus in and get to monetization as quickly as possible. That really is how we operate. In the early stage business, a grand vision is all very well, but you have to have a very focused market penetration strategy. Otherwise, you don't survive. And to succeed, you have to survive. So if you like what we do here, refer 1M1M to serious entrepreneurs. And the resources are all at 1M1M.com. There's a terrific blog that a lot of people learn from just by following. It's free. You can learn from the book series. We have case study based books with 12 to 16 case studies each. And they're all available on Amazon. These roundtables happen every week. You're welcome to come as many times as you want. You can pitch once for free. If you want to keep, dialoguing with me and iterating on your venture, the best way to do that would be to join 1M1M Premium, which is our full acceleration program, and that includes investor introductions and so forth. We do have a digital curriculum that is available in the premium program as well. I suggest you go through the self-assessment. It's available for free on the website. Ask these questions. These are the investor due diligence questions. If you want to raise financing, you will have to answer these questions. And if you get stuck, I suggest you use 1M1M Basic, which is our curriculum only option to plug your knowledge gaps. That is an important way to zero in on various strategic elements that you will have to master to be able to raise financing. As a starter, I would say go through the bootstrapping course on the website. That's available if you go to the blog, 1Mby1M.com, and then go to the blog. It's pinned to the top. It'll take you about an hour. You can go through it and you will find plenty of the starting guidance there. Our philosophy is bootstrap first, raise money later. So I assume you guys understand that, and there's more on that topic and bootstrapping techniques and so forth. And you've heard some of this today. Eric and I kicked around the idea of bootstrapping with a paycheck, something we're using quite extensively right now. All right, so go to the website, dig around, see what to expect from premium, from basic, FAQs, video FAQs, and see if this is the program you want to use. Our curriculum is detailed as well. It is a case study based curriculum and a case study based program. We use blueprints from what other people have done before. And our investor introduction policies are also clearly articulated in the investor introduction section, which you can access from the homepage of 1Mby1M. Our methodology, as I said, is bootstrap first, raise money later. We work with over 300 investors very closely, but the understanding is that you're going to have to validate before you can raise money. There are very few investors who would invest in a first-time entrepreneur without some bootstrapping that happens up front. Repeat entrepreneurs is a different story. Repeat entrepreneurs have relationships with investors and they're willing to invest in that entrepreneur because they've already made money off that entrepreneur. That's a different story. But if you're a first-time entrepreneur, your best bet is bootstrap first, raise money later. All right, so that is it. We have free roundtables every week going forward, except February 25th. We don't have one, but otherwise we have 2 more in February, 4 more in March. So plenty of options for you to come and work with me at these sessions. You're welcome to dial in. I will start taking questions. You can also activate your computer audio and you will be able to dial in here. Questions about the 1Mby1M program, you can talk to Irina Patterson, irina@1Mby1M.com, and she'll be happy to chat with you. I'm coming to, you can also start typing in your questions in the public chat and I will pick up questions from there. So let's see. Liviu Negrila, how similar from tech stack perspective do you feel that robotics and waste management would be compared to ag tech? Any thoughts about ag tech and AI image processing? I guess you were asking this in the when we were discussing, Eric and I were discussing the waste management. Well, you know, similar or not, there may be lots of similarities, computer vision related similarities. There may be a lot of mechanical robotics similarities, but from a go-to-market strategy, you're going to have to focus. This is what I was telling Sonal as well. There may be lots of similarities in architecture students versus the middle school students from age 9 to 13, but workflow, go-to-market are going to be different, and you need to pick a segment that you want to position your product to. Okay, Liviu, you have another question. I haven't sent a pitch. It's more of an invitation that I wanted to talk to you about to present your 1M1M efforts to the largest London startup community. I'm sure everyone there will appreciate your wisdom and thoughts. Liviu would be very happy to chat with you. Maureen, why don't you make a note of Liviu's invitation and follow up with her, and we can certainly do something with this community. We'll be delighted. Thank you. Anybody else? Any other questions, comments?
So I have one small question, Rana, is that
yes.
What do you generally think about?
Sonal, you have to learn to pronounce my name. It's Romana.
Sarmana.
Yes, there we go.
Okay. Sramana. Okay, I got it. All right. So Sramana, quick question is that what do you think about the idea on which we are working?
Online learning is booming. So I haven't studied your space in sufficient detail to know, but online learning is booming. I don't see any reason why you shouldn't be able to build something out of this. You know, I think it's an interesting idea. I think there is an audience for it, especially in the high-end parent category. I think people invest a lot of money in children's education and in being, you know, creative and interesting. There is a school here in Silicon Valley called Nueva School that takes pride in working with gifted kids and so on. So there, I think there is a positioning with which you can make this thing work very well. So I think it's a good idea.
Okay. Okay.
But
I'll keep you posted.
All of you, just a second. One thing for all of you. Idea is not enough. You have to execute on the idea. And that's where all these laser sharp positioning and, you know, repeatable sales process and all these things come in. And that's what we try to emphasize and teach in 1M is you can knock the ball out of the park if you execute on a good idea. But otherwise, if you cannot execute a good idea, a lot of good ideas die in the vine. So, of course. So absolutely, we've been talking to Eton College, which is a boarding school in UK as well. Moibi School. This is in San Mateo, is it? Nueva School is in yes, it's here. Yes, in San Mateo. That's right. Right. I'll keep you posted. You should look up there is a whole bunch in Phillips Academy in Andover, Hotchkiss in Connecticut. There's a whole bunch of high-end schools that are perfect for what you're trying to do. And I would kind of position, forget about all the peripheral stuff. Right now, you should focus on getting 100, 200, 500 of these absolute like premium schools and just go execute the hell out of that category. Don't worry about anything else for the moment. Okay, I'll stay focused. I'll keep you posted, and I'll thank you for it. Okay, for sure. Bye. Okay, thank you. Anybody else, folks? Thank you, Nzube. You have a compliment. Thank you. I'm glad you're enjoying it. I don't see any other questions, and I don't see any other. Libya, returning since 2018, always a pleasure to hear your thoughts. Good. I'm glad you're enjoying it. I enjoy this very much. You know, it's always fun to see all the creativity that exists in our community, in the heads of so many innovators and entrepreneurs. To see what you guys are cooking is always like a weekly pleasure for me to see what you are doing.
So I want to ask again.
Yes.
Okay. So are you saying anything around crowdfunding is not viable?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that you have to create a clear picture of what is the mission of this crowdfunding. Is it crowdfunding because the community is trying to organize a crowdfunding campaign to finance a local piece of infrastructure, and you gave the example of a local transformer? Or are you trying to organize crowdfunding such that you're bringing in investors who expect a return? These are two different categories, and the requirements of what you need to put together in your infrastructure are completely different. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Anybody else?
Hey, Shravanath, very nice to hear you again. I'm Livio. 2018 was the time when we were still able to meet for a coffee. I don't really remember the name of the place. I'm currently in London now. Really a pleasure to be back. But what I wanted to ask is more of a broader question. If you feel like the pandemic, obviously has accelerated a lot of projects going digital going forward, but did you notice a lot of startups picking up and there's more interaction on that side, or is it more?
There is an enormous number of startups working. So I think the other thing that the big thing that you should take note of is the fact that people are very willing to invest outside of Silicon Valley, even though the vast majority of investors are in Silicon Valley. There are investors everywhere nowadays, but even wherever the investors are, they're willing to look outside of their local geography to source deals, to fund deals. So COVID has turned this whole ecosystem into a virtual ecosystem, which I think is very much in favor of our global community of entrepreneurs. You can pretty much raise money from anywhere.
And how does that correlate with, for instance, the risk appetite of investors compared to, say, 2018?
Our philosophy has always remained the same, and it's still the same. It's bootstrap first, raise money later. If you can get to validation, and if you can even get to some level of traction so that people understand what is the business that you're building, your project most likely is fundable, as long as it is a large enough TAM. Those are the things that investors are looking for. And if you come to us with at least the beginnings of that, we can shepherd you through to a position where you can raise money, and then we can introduce you to investors.
Right, thank you very much. I'll return to you with the invitation I was mentioning, and we'll pick it up from there. Thank you very much.
All right, great. Okay, folks, I think we're going to call it a day. It's 9:25. We normally try to finish by 9:30. I will see you again next week. Bye, everybody. Thanks for coming. Great speaking with everyone.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.